The one thing that I found so interesting when I learned about it in medical school was that's our biggest organ outside after skin, right? Skin is number one and gut is number two. So it makes sense that it plays such a huge role in our lives and in mood, like you said, and heart health. And so if your heart is having issues, your sex life is also having issues. So guys, listen up. This is going to you're going to learn so much on this podcast. So what can we do to have a healthy gut? Now, there's lots of things. So let's start on diet first. Like, how can we optimize our diet to get the best gut health?
Okay, so that's a great question. Gut health is really reliant on the foods that we eat, and our bacteria really rely on getting something called prebiotic foods and probiotic-rich foods. And that's because our bacteria, the biotic portion of it, is relying on things that is going to help make its metabolites. So when we think about that, think of high fiber foods. So high fiber foods are things that can allow the bacteria to make something called short chain fatty acids, okay? And short chain fatty acids are really the metabolites or breakdown products of fermentation by this bacteria. So when a bacteria are able to make those, then those short chain fatty acids can then bind to other receptors and help make serotonin, your happy hormone. It can help make dopamine, that's your other happy hormone. It can help with insulin sensitivity, which is huge in terms of weight control. It can help give your messages to the brain in terms of how we're supposed to be feeling. And vice versa, it's important as to what you think and what you see and what you expose yourself to. That's also very important in terms of that.
So what do you mean by think, see, like in terms of like what you look at? Like, is that going to affect your gut health?
So yes and no. So when you see, what you want to do is to see sunlight and natural daylight, okay? Our brains have something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is a fancy term, basically meaning that that's the area of the brain that realizes when it's daytime, when it's nighttime. So not only do we awaken, but our bodies and our minds awaken when, the sun is up. And so by getting natural sunlight, your body has something called a circadian rhythm, which runs on 24 hours, and that is awoken by seeing sunlight. And getting at least 20 to 30 minutes of natural light, it can be even on a cloudy day, can really help to, one, set what, the time is in your body, and also helps release endorphins, serotonin in your body. So that also allows for the gut to know, okay, it's time to kind of get things moving in our system, to get things processing. We don't have to slow down at this time. So when it's daytime, it can start processing. So what you see should be sunlight first. The other thing is what you hear, right? Having negative or toxic or disruptive sounds, disruptive thoughts, disruptive conversations can actually be negatively impacting our gut health because they can produce stress or anxiety, right? So if you think about it, if you get in a fight with someone or you have a bad conversation with someone, you're in a state of almost distress because you're like, oh God, like this person told me something, or now I don't feel good. That then triggers your brain to not release serotonin. It's shutting down the amount of happiness or happy hormones that it's releasing. And so that alters the way that our intestines move. Sometimes it puts our bodies into almost like a fight or flight mode because the body feels like it's in a state of distress. And chronically, that can really affect the way that our intestines move.
Yeah, that's so good because, we learned in medical school that, so fight or flight, for those of you who don't know, basically your blood flow is taking away from these organs, rest and digest organs, and going towards the ability for you to like run or get away from the stressor, right? And so you're no longer providing blood flow to the gut. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then back to the diet, because I wanted to go deeper into that. So prebiotics, probiotics, break it down for us. What is the difference? What are some good foods that will give us both prebiotics and probiotics, and our supplements? Like, is there a role for them?
Okay. So think of prebiotics as food for the probiotics, okay? So food for our bacteria can include onions. It can include garlic, asparagus. Think of your green, leafy, rough veggies, okay? So you think about asparagus and broccoli and your Brussels sprouts, right? Those are fiber-filled foods that will feed the bacteria. Now, what bacteria? The probiotic bacteria that you think of include lactobacillus, right? You see a bottle of a kefir or a yogurt, you see on there, it's written all different kinds of lactobacillus. That's one of the probiotic bacteria. Bifidobacterium, that's another one. Rhamnosus is another one. And so those are key probiotic bacteria that are very important in helping to make those metabolites called short-chain fatty acids.
Got it. Got it. And so what's the difference between prebiotics and probiotics?
So prebiotics are the foods and the probiotics are the bacteria.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. So is there foods? So as you mentioned, there's foods that are the prebiotics and then the probiotics, kefir, yogurt. What else is there that we could have? Like, are there fermented foods or things like that?
So fermented foods, I think, are great. So if you don't know, fermented foods are foods that have undergone the natural process of turning their organic sugars into organic acids, like lactic acid. Okay. And so I think of them as foods that begin with a K, because again, my name begins with a K. And so like, okay, I will tell my patients sauerkraut has a K in there, kimchi, kefir, kombucha, right? Those are all things, and think about them, they're all kind of tangy. And so those are the foods that contain a lot of live active bacteria. And they have undergone the natural process of fermentation over time. And so that's why they contain a lot of the lactobacillus or bifidobacterium and multiple other strains that are very healthy for you.
That's great. And I think, in our culture, we eat a lot of yogurt, as like with every meal, we'll often have yogurt. And I think that comes from ancient teachings of health and how it's good for our gut.